The Last of Us is one of the most popular shows on HBO, so I'm gonna rank all 9 episodes on a tier list from S tier to D tier, S tier being the best and D tier being the worst. With that said, let's begin with episode 1. This episode does a really good job at both setting up the rest of the series and showing us how dangerous the infected are. I like how the first half of the episode is mainly about how the outbreak started, and the second half is about how people adapted to it. It hooks you into the show pretty quickly and is overall a great episode, so I'm gonna put it in A tier. Next up is episode 2. This episode has a lot of exciting moments. Tessa's death scene was really well done, and I think the infected are at their scariest in this episode. The CGI in this episode, like in the rest of the series, is really good. Like after binge watching The Walking Dead with a CGI budget of $10 and an old computer, it's nice to see an apocalyptic show with great CGI, and the abandoned city was very detailed. I like the dynamic in this episode where Ellie has been bitten and Joel and Tess believe she is going to become infected at any moment while not knowing she is immune. So for all of that, I'm also playing this in A tier. And next up is episode 3. This is the episode that made me realize what the show is really about. Instead of being about the apocalypse or the infected taking over, this episode showed that The Last of Us is about the humans more than the killer toe fungus. And for a one-off episode with 2 characters we will never see again, it did a really good job. Seeing these 2 guys grow old together in the apocalypse and all the problems they had to face along the way was brilliant. Seeing Nick Offerman's character come from a guy who wanted to be alone to not being alone was pretty wholesome, and the episode as a whole had some great dialogue and acting from our 2 main leads, so I'm gonna put it in S tier, definitely one of my favorites in the season. And now we have episode 4. The majority of this episode has our 2 main characters traveling by car through the apocalyptic world, really starting to develop the father-daughter relationship between them that the show does really well. And the episode ends when they drive through a big city and immediately get into a really good action scene with these guys who are trying to take their car, setting up the next episode where they'll have to fight a murderous group of survivors. It shows more of what this world looks like after the apocalypse. It has a really nice action scene at the end and gives more depth to these characters. So a good episode, but because it's kind of slow and is mostly just for world building, I'll put it in B tier. Next up is episode 5. The characters introduced in this episode are all nicely fleshed out. The villain is made hateable enough whereas you want to see her die. Henry and Sam feel like real people and was sad when they died and show the different types of infected that exist. The scene with all the infected attacking the survivors had some great cinematography, and the ending once again was very tragic and sad to watch, so I'm gonna put it in S tier. And next up is episode 6. This is possibly the most polarizing episode of the series. The revelation that Joel's brother was okay this whole time and just chose not to communicate with him made him unlikable for the first half of this episode. Then we find out that he didn't try to communicate with Joel because he was having a baby, and even after learning about that, Joel is still mad at him, which makes Joel seem unreasonable. And then we get the argument with Ellie and Joel where Ellie comes off as annoying and tone deaf to Joel losing his daughter, and Joel comes off as kind of mean to a child that looks up to him. Even though everyone is in character and makes sense why they would act this way in those situations, everyone just came off as kind of a jerk by the time this episode was over. I will say that the acting in this episode is possibly the best out of the entire show, and the argument was very realistic, but overall I just found this episode uncomfortable to get through, so I'm putting it in C tier. It's not bad by any means, it's just hard to watch. And before I get into the last 3 episodes of the show, if you enjoy this content and want to see more like it, consider subscribing. And next up we have episode 7. This is possibly the only episode of the show I genuinely didn't like, because even though the setting of an abandoned mall was really cool, I just found this episode boring and never really interested me while watching it. Because it keeps cutting back to Joel and him on the brink of dying, I found myself more invested in that plotline and wanting to see if Joel comes out okay than I did with the plotline where Ellie and this other kid hangs out on Carnival for a while and then one of them dies by the end of it. It was nice to get a backstory for this character, but they could have made it a little bit more entertaining and made the human conflict better, so for that I'm gonna put it in D tier. And next up we have episode 8. After 2 episodes I didn't enjoy that much, the show makes up for it with my favorite episode in the season. The acting was really good here, the guy who played the villain did a really good job at making him hateable, and this episode probably has the most intense moments in the series. Joel gets some standout moments where he's beating these guys up, and the revelation that the villain was secretly feeding his group human flesh was pretty frightening. This episode doesn't have one dull moment, so I'm gonna put it in S tier. And finally, we have the season finale. This episode has the best action scene in the entire series. The CGI, as always, is fantastic, the villains are hateable, and the ending took some risks I think paid off really well. I kind of wanted a little bit more from the season finale, especially with how fast paced it was, so I won't put it in S tier, but I will put it in A tier.